Hello, I'm Dr. Annie Wren, a psychologist at the University of Oklahoma Counseling Center. This video is about coping thoughts. It's one part of a series of videos called Feel Better Fast, based on our live workshops of the same name. Use the links below the video to follow us on social media. We will use social media to announce the dates and times of our live workshops each semester, including this one. In some situations, there's different possible ways to think of a situation. There's the thought that comes first to us, which we often tend to believe. Sometimes that's a negative thought or an inaccurate one, but because it comes so automatically, we run with it. Instead, we could choose to think about the situation in a way that's more accurate, more adaptive to the situation, or which helps us feel better about something that's out of our control anyways. Thoughts, emotions, and behaviors all influence each other. Their relationship is shaped like a triangle. The arrows run in both directions. Our thoughts makes us feel a certain way. Feelings can lead us to behave a certain way, and our behaviors also influence our thoughts. And it goes the other way around too, so any parts of this triangle can have a causal effect on the other two parts. Let's say you have to give a speech. If you have the thought, this is an opportunity to share my great ideas with other people, you'll probably feel calm or excited. So this thought is causing that feeling. But let's say instead you have the thought, I'm bad at public speaking. It's the same situation as before, but you had a different thought about it that caused a different feeling. Now you might feel anxiety or butterflies in your stomach. You respond to this feeling with a behavior, which for anxiety is commonly avoidance. You avoid running for club officer even though you'd like that position because you'd have to give a campaign speech. This behavior then causes more thoughts because the more you avoid public speaking, the less practice you'll have. The less practice you have, the more you might lose confidence, or you might actually fall behind your peers at developing the skill. So in the future, you're more likely to think, well, I've never done it well at it before, so there's no way I can start being good at it now. So you're trapped in this self-perpetuating cycle where the thoughts, feelings, and behavior feed into each other and makes each other worse. If you let the cycle continue, you'll be trapped in your public speaking anxiety instead of getting better. Here's another example of how this could work. Let's start with the feeling this time. You wake up feeling a little tired today. You have a couple different choices what you think about this feeling. If your thought is, I don't have the energy to do anything, then you might stay in bed. Think about the times when you've stayed in bed all day. Has it ever made you feel more energetic? Unless you're physically ill, probably not. Staying in bed makes you feel more tired, and that reinforces the belief that you really don't have the energy to do anything. The good news is that in order to get out of this self-perpetuating cycle, you can break this triangle at any of these 3 points. Breaking it at even one point will stop the entire cycle. If you want to break the triangle here at the feelings point, watch the video called ABC Please for emotion regulation. If you want to break the triangle here by using your behaviors, watch the video called Opposite Action. Today, we're going to focus on thoughts. We're going to break the triangle at the top of the triangle here. Let's say you're walking on the oval when you see your friend Lupe. You say hi, but Lupe doesn't say hi back. What is your first thought about how this happened? What are other possible explanations? You might think that Lupe hates you and she's thinking of ending the friendship. You might think that Lupe is just a rude person. Maybe she had a lot on her mind that day, alternatively. Maybe she's just thinking about exams, a flat tire, a fight with her girlfriend, or she just isn't paying attention to her surroundings. Or maybe you assume Lupe is wearing earphones and she didn't hear you at all. The thought you believe will determine which emotion you have. If Lupe hates you, then you probably feel sad. If you think that she's thinking of ending the friendship but hasn't done it yet, you would feel anxiety because of the thought that there's still something you might be able to do or should do to fix it. If you think Lupe is just rude, then you would feel angry. And if you think she's dealing with a lot, then you might just feel sympathy towards her. Or if she didn't hear you, you might feel neutral. So all those different thoughts are causing different emotions. So if you're having an emotion, it's being caused by a thought. At first, you might not know what that thought is because you might be new to the skill of putting thoughts into words, and that's okay. When you started elementary school, you learned that crying means you're sad, stamping your foot means you're angry, and you are learning to just label those emotions. This is anger, this is sadness. Now that you're in college, you can take it to the next level and learn to put the thought behind that feeling into words. So not just to label the feeling, but now also putting that thought into words. And it's okay, it takes practice. So there's a few basic rules to get you started. So anxiety. If you feel anxious, nervous, sweaty, restless, butterflies in your stomach, tense muscles, fast breathing, to get to that thought that's associated with anxiety, you ask yourself, what bad thing is going to happen in the future? Anxiety is rooted in future-oriented thoughts. Something bad will happen, but there's still something that you can do to prevent it. That's why your body is getting into the fight or flight mode, to fight off the threat or to get ready to run away. But the emphasis is on action. You have to do something. If you feel anxious and don't know what the thought is, ask yourself what bad thing will happen and what would be the worst part of that. That will help you find the thought that's causing your anxiety. So going on to sadness. Sadness is past tense. Sadness is caused by something in the past. What bad thing has happened and what does it mean to you? So sadness can't prevent the bad thing the way anxiety wants to prevent something. Sadness can't do anything about this thing and it's resigned to its fate. So that's why sadness makes you feel down in your body instead of like tense and ready to fight. Sadness makes you want to crawl back into the bed under the covers. If your dog died and you're picturing a future without your dog and that makes you sad, it can feel a little bit like a future-oriented thought because you're picturing the future, but the activating event was something that happened in the past, which was your dog dying in the past. So if you feel sad and ask yourself what bad thing happened in the past, you'll realize that it's the past event and something that you can't fight, that you can't change, that is making you sad. So anger. Anger means that you think someone has wronged you in some way. Someone didn't do what they were supposed to do. So when you feel angry, ask yourself, like, who is it that did something that was wrong? Like, what rule have they broken? Usually you have in your mind a rule, whether stated, unspoken, or spoken. It might just be something unconscious in the back of your mind that you think this is a rule that people ought to follow. And you might not even realize that that rule is living in the back of your mind. But just ask yourself, like, what is the rule and who has broken that rule? What is the rule that they broke? And that's how you'll find your angry thought. And the last emotion that we'll cover today, to just keep it to the basic ones, is guilt. Guilt is when you wronged someone, but that someone could be yourself. So you might have violated your own values and not lived up to your own expectations or your own mental rules. So both anger and guilt are rooted in these rules. You have rules for yourself about how you should behave, also rules for other people about how others should behave. So when these rules are broken, then you would feel anger towards others or guilt when you've broken those rules yourself. So now you know how to find the thought that's causing the emotion. The thought that you just put words to is your automatic thought. The automatic thought is named that because it's what you automatically tend to think about a situation. Some automatic thoughts are inaccurate. For example, there were a bunch of things we could have thought about Lupe for not saying hi back. Some of those thoughts are accurate and some are inaccurate. Inaccurate thoughts lead to unnecessarily bad feelings and unnecessary suffering. But not all thoughts need to be changed because not all emotions need to be changed. For example, there's a time and a place for grieving a loss, and to be sad about that is to be human. But maybe the loss is a breakup, and after you've allowed yourself a certain period of time to grieve, maybe you want to change your emotions and move on. So then you try to change your thoughts. So for times when you do want to break the triangle by using your thoughts, the first step is to start writing down your automatic thoughts. This is not open-ended journaling, although there's a time and a place for that. Thoughts are one sentence long. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 thoughts about the same situation, different angles that might be bad. So failing a class might be bad news for your scholarship, or failing a class might be bad news for convincing your parents to finally start treating you like an adult. So those are 2 separate thoughts. You want to jot down 2 or 3 thoughts about a situation that are the most powerful. bad things about that situation. Those are the thoughts that make the best targets for change. When I write down automatic thoughts, I split a blank sheet of paper into 3 columns like this. The middle column is smaller than the other 2, but you can do this however you want. You can also download a worksheet from OU's website in the link below the video. So write your automatic thought here in the left column. And each line can be a different thought, or you can take up as much space as you need to for each thought. So when writing that thought, be specific. Instead of "I'm stupid," try writing "I'm not smart enough to get into nursing school," or "I can't pass my chemistry class." The more specific you can be, the better this tool will work. Second, make sure you're writing thoughts and not emotions. Studying sucks is an emotion, not a thought. What is it about studying that sucks? Maybe you think everybody else is outside basking in the sunshine while you're stuck inside studying, and that's what makes it suck. So write thoughts, not emotions. Third, write statements, not questions. Instead of "what if I fail the exam?" write "I will fail the exam." Instead of "what if Lupe doesn't like me anymore?" write "my friendship with Lupe is ending." Write the bad outcome as if it's actually going to happen, not a "what if." This will help you recognize where your thought went wrong, which is better than if you leave it open-ended. A final tip on writing automatic thoughts. Ask "what if" and "what then" until your question turns into the thing that bothers you the most. So sometimes it's not failing one exam that's giving you a whole mountain of anxiety. It's that if you fail the exam, you assume that you're going to lose your scholarship. Sometimes it's not one friendship ending that's the worst part. It could be, but sometimes the worst part is that it's because if your friendship ends, you think there's something wrong with you and no one will ever want to be your friend ever again. So poke around until you find the thing that's really bothering you. The more practice you get, the more quickly you'll be able to jump to the right thought to write down. If you want, pause this video, think of a situation that's bothering you, and write down some of your anxious thoughts right now. So now let's talk about the middle column of the worksheet, which is for thinking traps. A thinking trap is a specific label for the way in which your thought is unrealistic, unhelpful, or unnecessarily negative. They're also called cognitive distortions for those of you who feel like looking it up online. I'm going to go over some of these traps, but you can download a full list of thinking traps from OU's website if you want. First, overgeneralization. The name of the first trap is overgeneralization because it takes a one-time event and makes it into a generalized rule about what will always happen. I got into a car accident once, so all cars are dangerous all the time. A third grade teacher laughed at something I said once, so I'm never asking any teacher or any professor a question ever again. So that's called overgeneralization, assuming that because it happened once, it's always going to be that way. Another trap is called all or nothing thinking. If you made one mistake in your piano performance, then the entire recital was a failure. People will obsess over the 1 or 2 questions they couldn't answer on an exam, instead of the 90 questions they got right. This also means not leaving any room for shades of gray. You either don't get COVID at all, or you get COVID and die. There's no room for shades of gray there, such as getting COVID would suck, but many people are sick for a month and they get better. So it's not going to be a good month, but there are shades of gray between complete health and completely dying. Another trap is called mind reading. This is a big one that lots of people do. It's assuming that you know what other people are thinking, even if there's no evidence for that. If someone doesn't text you back right away, you assume that you said something wrong, you assume that they hate you, you assume that they think you're weird, and you immediately assume everyone is judging you for it. Another trap is called shoulding. These thoughts often include the word should, like saying "I should have known" when there's no way you could have known, or "I should be better at this by now," when there's no rule about that. Another trap is called personalization. This means blaming yourself for something that has nothing to do with you. If your professor doesn't reply your email, it could be that they're sick or busy. It doesn't mean that they hate you or hate what you wrote. Or you might think, if I hadn't driven on this particular road today, I wouldn't have run over someone's cat. But you don't have control over fate like that. That cat was in the road at rush hour, chances are another car would have run over that cat at the same place, same time. So you can't necessarily attribute things to yourself, and when you find that you do, then you would label that thought as personalization. So those are some of the most common thinking traps. Some thoughts can fall under more than one trap. You can ask yourself which one fits better, but also it's not important to pick the one that's exactly right. The important thing is to recognize that your thought is trapped or distorted from reality in some way. You can now pause this video and in the column for the trap, label each thought with a trap that it falls under. All right, now you're ready to find coping thoughts. The coping thought is what you would like to think about the situation instead. It's another perspective on the situation that's either more accurate or more helpful. It's the perspective you wish you would believe about it. There's a variety of questions you can ask yourself to find the coping thought. One is, what would be more realistic to think about the situation? Another is, what's the evidence that this is true? Or what's the evidence it's false? If your thinking trap is overgeneralization, statistics can be a helpful way to go to look for your coping thought. What percentage of drives involve car crashes? What percentage of car crashes are life-changing or fatal? Sometimes it helps to look up a specific number, but if you can't find one, don't sweat it. You can just take a guess, because whatever number you put down is probably still closer to reality than what your automatic thought was. Memorizing a certain number isn't the goal here. The goal is to help your feelings be somewhat more aligned with the facts. Sometimes you can calculate a statistic from your own past. Take the number of times your feared outcome has come true and divide it by the number of times you've been in that situation or you've had that worry. So for example, think of the number of exams you failed. Divide it by the number of exams you've ever taken, and that's your statistical likelihood of failing the exam. Again, mathematical accuracy isn't the goal. It doesn't matter how inaccurate your automatic thought is. It's about recognizing that it is inaccurate and that there's more than one possible perspective or more than one potential outcome to any situation. There's no 100% guarantee that you pass an exam, but you shouldn't think as though there's a 100% guarantee that you'll fail either. Just recognize multiple possibilities and recognize shades of gray. Asking yourself what shades of gray are possible is a good way of finding coping thoughts if the thinking trap for your thought is all or nothing. Sometimes the coping thought is telling yourself that you can cope with an outcome even if it does happen. Sometimes the automatic thought is that your partner is going to break up with you. Some coping thoughts are asking yourself to take a look at the evidence of the ways they've shown that they want to be with you. But sometimes the coping thought is telling yourself that you can survive a breakup and that it doesn't mean that you'll be sad forever or alone forever. Maybe you'll be sad for a month or two, but picturing yourself recovering eventually, finding someone better, and even though finding someone better isn't a guarantee, it is a possibility, and you need to keep that possibility and other possibilities in mind instead of prematurely dismissing good possibilities and only focusing or picturing a future with the bad ones. Sometimes they're equally likely because there's no evidence pointing to one as being rated above the other. So just keep the positive ones in mind too. Another good question to ask to find a coping thought includes, what would you tell a friend you cared about if they were in your situation? We often give our best advice to others instead of to ourselves. If you don't blame your friend or label them as stupid for the thing that happened, then chances are you shouldn't blame yourself or label yourself. Write down what you would say to a friend and say it to yourself from now on. Sometimes putting yourself in the other person's perspective is good for the thinking trap of mind reading and also personalization. Sometimes shoulding too, because if you wouldn't make the rule that your friend should be better at this by now, then maybe you shouldn't hold yourself to that rule either. There's no one-to-one equivalency of which coping thought goes with which thinking trap, but it's a good place to start if you're having trouble finding a coping thought. A final question to ask yourself is, how many times have I thought this about a similar situation in the past? How many times did it turn out to be true? And how often did my automatic thought turn out to be wrong? Once you get the hang of it, you'll realize which questions work particularly well for you as an individual. You can pause this video and come up with some coping thoughts and write them down over here. The reason we write down automatic thoughts and coping thoughts is that it helps us consciously take the effort of putting thoughts and feelings into words and recognizing them. By writing, sometimes we recognize the ways they're distorted right away. By writing down the coping thoughts, we save ourselves the trouble of coming up with a great coping thought and then forgetting it the next time when anxiety is high. It's hard to think of coping thoughts when you're in the thick of the bad situation. So it's good to write these down when you're feeling a little calmer. Practice them on a good day. And then when that situation comes up again or when things get tough, you'll be more skillful and ready to use your coping thoughts. It's like practicing a new dance move in front of your own mirror instead of trying to learn it while you're performing on stage. If you get in plenty of practice when things are calm, then when it's time to get on that stage, you'll be well rehearsed. One way to do that is by reviewing things that have bothered you in the past, but that might not be bothering you right this minute, and rehearsing how you'd think about it differently if it came up again in the future. Another reason we want to write it all down is that the same automatic thoughts keep coming to mind over and over again. Instead of debating with yourself every time that happens, just refer to the chart. You want to practice these as much as possible. Take your best coping thoughts from the right column and write these down on the Notes app in your phone so that you can review them whenever and wherever the automatic thought pops into your mind. Also set a recurring alarm on your phone to review this worksheet every day or at least every week. Put your worksheet somewhere that will remind you to look at it. Even if you don't fully believe the coping thought just yet, at least read it over to yourself just once. Every time the automatic thought comes up, read over the coping thought at least once. Sometimes it's like learning to say a word in a new language. The automatic thought is to say the word in your first language. It just feels automatic. You have to suppress the urge of running with the first language and put effort into saying the word in a different language. But if you were to say hello to your friends in Spanish every single day, then the next time when you see those same friends, you'll just say hola instead of having to suppress your urge to say hello in English. So it doesn't happen right away, but the important thing is to recognize that even a little bit of progress is better than none, and remember to keep practicing. So thanks for watching. If you want to learn to use the different arrows on the triangle, here's where to go next. To learn to use your behaviors to influence your feelings, watch ABC Please. To use behaviors to influence your thoughts, watch Opposite Action. And remember, OU students, staff, and faculty, if you need more help, you can make an appointment with a counselor by calling 405-325-2911. If you're not affiliated with OU and you would like help with mental health, you can search for a provider through your health insurance company's website or by using www.psychologytoday.com to find a therapist. Thanks for watching.